Hello, everybody.
You'll be fine.
How have you guys been? Welcome to our bi-weekly dev stream. We are the Foxhole team.
It's just the three of us, actually.
Yeah, that is the Foxhole team. There's nobody else, particularly nobody that is missing. Like for instance, Matt. He doesn't exist.
Or like the 11 other people on the team.
On the team, yes.
Those guys don't exist either.
I am HB. This is Anthony that some of you might know, might not know. And of course, as usual, that is Mark.
I mean, today we have a special guest, which is Anthony.
Wait, he's special? I didn't know he was special.
Right, special.
He's a guest, all right?
I'm here. I just
special in different ways.
We actually don't get guests enough here. We don't get guests as often as we should.
Yes.
And my goal in the long run is to get as many people on the team onto the stream as possible. But
as long as they're comfortable.
As long as they're comfortable with it. Not everyone's comfortable, but maybe in time we can get more of them comfortable.
Hopefully, yeah.
We'll just drag them out here.
Because who wants to hear like myself and HB talk every single time? That's really boring, right? After like a year and a half of hearing from us.
Jesus Christ, who wants it? So yes, how have things been on this long weekend? It was a long weekend here in Canada.
Pretty good, actually.
Are you guys excited? Well, how about you, Anthony? How have been the last few days for you?
That was good.
In and out of the office.
That was all right. Got some swimming in. Got a tan. You know?
Oh, nice.
That's pretty much a long weekend. It was nice, but yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I had a wedding to go. It was fantastic. Ooh, so good. Other than that, we are very excited to things that are coming. The pipeline keeps moving, and we're going to talk a little bit of how this pipeline is today. I think it's going to be a slightly different dev stream than usual because of that, because things are moving forward and we want to explain what was our process a little bit. And then of course we're going to start with the community highlights and end with the Q&A as per usual. Want to start with the community highlights?
Sure, yeah. I guess I would like...
Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I want to sneak in like a couple of things about what to expect in the next while.
Okay.
For those of you who haven't been... I've actually been like talking a lot to the community over the last week in various places through the roundtables. Just like I just felt like there's like 3 days in a row where I was like, hey, I've been actually like talking like every day. I started with like the community stream, and then there was I was a part of some like testing with the community, and then we had the roundtable, and so. I have felt like people should have a pretty good picture about what's coming in the next short while. But for those of you who weren't part of those conversations, we have 016 that's not too far off from launching, and that's going to have sort of the starting point of little bits of the Logi revamp, which is going to be a very long-term process that stretches all the way until next year. But we're going to start seeing the first small bits of it. We're going to get feedback on it, because I know you guys have already have a lot of strong thoughts about the bits that are going into 016 and in 017. I think we're going to see some things that are going to shake things up even more. We have the storage facility. Well, that's not really going to shake things up too much, but it's going to be more of an additional nice feature for Logi. But there's going to be some other things I think in 017 that is going to have a larger impact on how wars are going to play out, and it's probably going to be in terms of like changing the meta of the game, probably one of the bigger things since World Conquest launched, assuming we get all of it done on time. But I think 017 will be more Logi changes, more things that will change the progression of the war at a higher level. So I can't wait to talk about some of that. Hopefully on the next stream, we'll be able to dive much deeper into some of those upcoming changes. But I can't wait to talk about it. So
Cool. That's very nice.
yeah.
I'm excited for that as well.
Well, it's also fun, HB, because I find that we overcame a lot of big problems in the last, like, I would say, first half of the year with like first Conquest and then fighting all the fires from Conquest, like the queues and managing population, and then skirmish mode had a lot of issues. And I find that now we're almost like I feel refreshed because I feel like we get to work on the fun stuff now, right? Whereas before it was like very stressful, like big problems we had to overcome, and now it's like working on the communication tools, working on some of the town revamp stuff in the background, working on these logic changes. Some of the conversations are stressful, but it's just like I feel freed. You know what I mean? To work on a lot of the stuff that we've been waiting to work on for so long, right? So
yeah, there's definitely an energy now, even with all the dev team. It's just like they're really excited to like come back and tackle some of these things that have been like sort of been put on the side.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just
right?
like, finally, let's like refine the communication. Sweet.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. And then I know you've been waiting a long time to work on some of the town revamp stuff, which is again kind of happening in the background. But I know you've been waiting for that for like a year now. So.
Oh yeah,
So
that's
it's
one of the things
exciting,
Mark said to me coming on. Yeah, we're gonna be looking at the towns. I was like, okay, cool. And it was like week after week. So how about those towns?
Yeah, exactly.
some sweet town art. No, I got a truck for you. Okay, fine, all right, sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, anyways,
Cool.
yeah.
I think that with this, we're gonna go for community highlights,
Ooh.
and yeah, we're gonna start with community highlights snippets. Yeah. Okay, so I didn't have a lot of time to go through a lot of the community this week because of the of the day off that we had. So unfortunately, I only have 2 slides for you, but they are nice and juicy, and I love them a lot. So first of all, Lurkus has come back in like force, like
Full Lurkus effect.
oh my god, like his style has been like developing for the past year or so at least.
Yeah.
And even when you compare the stuff that he was doing before and the stuff he's doing now, boy oh boy, the guy's like really really good now. He did some amazing fan art, he did some amazing art on its own, and I really really like this warden that he did. I think it's
like officer's uniform.
yeah, and
right?
it's just beautifully done, painted. The art style is fantastic. It fits the game like in a lore kind of way. I really like it. In the same token, Turtle and Rabbit continues to surprise us. And I think there were several people doing like wardens recently, and he did this one on the one on the right side, which is also really cool, kind of like in the same idea of uniform, but on his own style. So I think that I'm very happy that we have like these people that used to do a lot of illustration coming back very very strong.
This is my like favorite like fan art stuff to look at. I mean, I love the vehicles and everything, but like I'm always bugging Matt because I love leading into the lore like of any video game, especially Foxhole, of course. Like I love hearing about like what's the history, like what do these guys look like, and it influences a lot of like the art choices that we make when we're building assets or whatever to think about what's in it. So when I see this kind of stuff, I'm like, cool. I'm like, this like looks like a good fit. This was like the history of Foxhole.
Yeah,
this is sick. So.
In this case in particular, for instance, the reason why we had so many warden drawings that Matt stated that challenge to draw Callahan, remember?
Yes.
So that's what prompted it out. Like these are like the imagination, like the reimagining of what Callahan would look like for the warden side.
Young whippersnapper. That stash.
Well, I mean, as we know, doing character designs are hard, right? So
yes.
Absolutely.
This is really cool to see.
Yeah. And the next one is just that Commander Angie continues to surprise us with his amazing miniatures. And this is another one that he did from scratch. Is a colonial soldier, Mac Random.
McRandom.
which I thought it was so damn funny.
No offense to any randoms out there.
I love McRandom.
I think it was really cool. If there's a lot of like detail, you can see in the community highlights more details of like his face and like the weapon that he's holding. And I mean, sure, this soldier in particular would be whipped because he had his shawl on the wrong shoulder.
Ah, yes.
But other than that,
well, his expression on his face looks surprised. He looks like he's about to get.
I was like, "Oh my god, it wasn't the left one."
Why'd I do this, man?
So, like, how long does it take to make something like this? I think I asked about the process before, but just in terms of like time and effort.
Commander Engine, you are in the chat right now. How long did it take for this one to get done? Let's see. He'll answer and I'll know
in a few moments, but. Yeah, I'm always curious about this because I have like zero experience.
I just have zero patience
like
to paint. Like take the time to paint stuff like this. It's always impressive because I just like it's talent and it's patience. Yeah, and it's just like with the tiny little paintbrush getting in there all like the details and stuff. I'm like, damn man, it's impressive.
Yeah, it's quite amazing the kind of stuff that he's doing. This is the one that got broken.
Oh, I wouldn't even know.
Yeah, so like he retouched it and redid it, and it's really nice. I am really happy. I like the base. Like, looks, I don't know, one of our middle areas maybe, like with the patch of grass.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty cool. But yeah, Umbro maybe. I don't know. I really like this figure. But yeah,
cool.
This is what we had for community highlights. You guys are gonna be able to see that more in depth and see more of what the community comes up with at the community highlights blog post that KFC is gonna post soon. I don't know when.
Sometime this week, hopefully.
Sometime this week, yeah. Please check our development blog and highlights. All the information on the game is there. And I think with that, we are gonna move forward with the dev stream.
Cool. Yeah, I guess I'll intro this section. This is new, right? This is a new thing that we're doing, but yeah, I mean that's basically what it is. We basically want to take. We thought it'd be cool to give you guys an inside look on how the pipeline for working on in art assets in Foxhole. I know you guys have seen little bits of this. Sometimes we show off the concept art, and we'll show off the models in various states, but never a detailed like breakdown. So I'll hand it over to you, Anthony. And if you wanna, are you comfortable with the first couple parts too, or
sure? It's no problem.
Okay, great.
As long as you guys don't mind listening to me talk for a while now.
Cool.
Might not.
Unfortunately, we don't have an Anthony only cam.
Yeah, is the filter on? I don't know. You'll blur my
please,
nose.
please keep it PG, please.
You're talking about I'm the cleanest guy in the office. So, anyways, starting out, like the first part of the process for anything really in Foxhole, especially where it is so grounded in reality, is you want to find something that's relatable to the real world. You want to find reference. You want to find something that you're going to be able to associate with the real world that we can put into the game, and so that when you're playing, you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense to what it is we're trying to be. Oh, that's good. Fixing that. Okay, cool. Thanks. So yeah, in the case of the sulfur mines, of course, you're going to reference mines, and like there's a very like industrial feel to Foxhole, like rusted, like burnt out stuff that's kind of being like refurbished and reused and rebuilt to sort of fit the war efforts, right? So Julian started out with just like surfing the net and finding some great references for something that would fit that sort of style. And he's found these like wicked, like giant gears, which again, like great big shapes that are really readable from a top-down game. And then you got these like abandoned mines, like really old, rusted out equipment. And that's kind of like your starting jumping off point. And then from there you Julian will start to like build ideas and paint pictures in his head that can be like, what can this thing look like that's going to represent a sulfur mine, this interactable object to get these resources. And from there, he'll start just like spitting out a ton of great, just like rough blocking drawings to get silhouettes, get the shapes, get the feel. And this is usually a back and forth with Mark. And like anyone else, really, like it's a very open, we have a very open sort of concept at Clapfoot where anybody walking by can see this and be like, oh yeah, you know, that feels pretty weird actually. You know, if someone agrees with it or whatever, there's always a pretty open communication in terms of what we feel is appropriate to Foxhole and what isn't appropriate to Foxhole. So yeah, we'll start out with these like rough concepts, and from there, figure out what's working, what isn't working, and after some back and forth between like a day or a few days, Mark will usually make the final decision on one of these guys, and we'll begin to move forward with what we think will be appropriate.
So one thing I wanted to add to that was that it's often a struggle to make things that don't actually have a one-to-one correspondence with something that exists in real life.
Oh, totally.
Because we'd have to make something like a real self-remind might be too large for the game.
Yeah.
And that's something that we often kind of struggle with, is sort of like making things. It's more important that something feels real than actually is real. Because if you look at any video game, like half the stuff in a lot of games are not built to realistic proportions and like scale and so on and so forth. But yeah, I just want to like mention that at this stage, that's a struggle that I always find, right? So anyways,
yeah, I think you hit two key, very important things you said there was feel, which I always think is a funny word for video games, but like everything is feel in gaming. It's like, you know, you could build a game that was 100% real world scale, real world everything, and when you start playing it, depending on the type of game you're playing, it could just feel weird. You could just be like, this is not the game we're trying to make. Mm-hmm. You know, you take something like God of War or Zelda or anything where like they really manipulate scale in amazing ways so that you get this feel of either you're a really tiny person in a big world or a really big person in a tiny world or whatever you're trying to make. Mm-hmm. And so for Foxhole, it's the same thing for everything. We find this challenge where oftentimes, because we want to have almost of an RTS feel to it, we will have to play with the scale and find that thing that is beautifully appropriate to Foxhole. And this is no different. Again, we wouldn't make a giant mine because it would take up like, you know, a quarter of the map, and then you wouldn't be able to have these everywhere because it just wouldn't be very realistic to Foxhole. Mm. But anyway, so continuing on, we hit this process, and then from there, Julian will go on and we'll choose the final look that we're happy with, or Mark's happy with, and we'll do like a full paint-in, or Julian will do a full paint-in to just get a really good feel of what this thing could look like color-wise. This one in particular is interesting because we actually have the barns, if you guys remember from a little while back, and they had a certain feel to them. And one of the things that Julian said is like, I really like the way those feel, and I want this asset to feel like it belongs in this world. So I actually want to use that wood texture to inject it into this asset. And so what he did is he built on this machinery onto something that was kind of like a wood barn that existed around the same time as those barns. And that's how you get this sort of feeling where you get this red wood and the white wood or white painted wood, and then you have this big hunk of machinery that's just like mining into the underworld of the nether and pulling out this sulfur. And so yeah, so from here we get the painted version, and then that usually gets handed off to either myself or Adam, and we'll start the blocking phase. Because even though we have this beautiful finished piece here, they're like, okay, cool, here's what it looks like. Just make it. Oftentimes, when you get in 3D, it can be super misleading, and it could just not totally feel appropriate to what you want. You're just like, it looks great on paper. You throw it in 3D, throw it in the game. You're like, oh man, this just feels weird. This is just not the right thing. Again, that word feel comes out. So
yeah, and also another important part in this process is that in this particular case, as you guys see, there is a little the scale size in there,
yeah,
which it's such a small thing that a lot of people forget when they're doing concept, is that to actually put scales, and it creates so many problems. I myself have been in a whole TV show in which they forgot, like it was like a TV show for kids, right? And they forgot, like, so all the main characters are small. They forgot the size of adults. So like 5 episodes in, when the adults were introduced, like nothing fits.
Yeah.
You had to change the whole. It was insane. So this is very, very important to have like the scale there, and thinking about the size is really important.
You got it, absolutely. And a very important references. He's holding a beer, which was also a point of scale reference, because the guys they gotta have their downtime, right?
I didn't notice that until now.
And one of the ones that we got, there's a little arrow specifically labeled beer, so we had to make sure it was accurate. So then the next process, as another part of this process, is to get.
I don't know if I should.
What?
the chat.
Well, I think it's fine.
Oh.
So Julian will go in and this is actually the scrap mining asset. So it's a different one, but it's the same principle where he'll take an in-game screenshot and just make sure that, again, before we even get into the modeling phase, make sure it fits in the world. Because again, you could throw this thing into Foxhole and it could just look like the weirdest thing. Like, oh, what's a Ferris wheel doing in here? Or if that's what it looks like, you know what I mean? So yeah, he'll do like a paint in and just make sure the colors match and everything. And it just gives us modeling artists, more information. Because the most information that we have going in before getting into modeling, the better. I mean, realistically. So that's great. And then after the concept is done and finalized and everything's looking good and feeling good, we go and we do this super crude block-in model, which typically takes like virtually no time. It's like a half an hour thing where we just gray box this box just to get the feel of it and just look at the scale, and we're like, how does this feel? Does this feel appropriate? Does this feel like the thing that we want to communicate to players? And again, even just looking at this point, you have those big shapes. You got this like big wheel that's clearly, pulling or pumping something. And then you've got your barn. And it's like all the shapes there are reading appropriately. You're just like, yep, this looks right. This feels right. And then, once we get approval on this, we'll move on to the next phase.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, there was something I want to jump in there and say. Something that we learned over time is that this phase specifically is like super valuable, especially when this model is heavily tied into some sort of a gameplay mechanic that is new. In this case, with the mines, functionality-wise, it's like you just use it like a structure. It doesn't. The model itself doesn't like mechanically sort of interact with the world, so it's not as complicated. But in the case of a vehicle, like for example, with some of like the landing vehicles as an example,
the Jeep was a big one too. Yeah.
That's something where you definitely need to test the functionality too at this phase, because before we go off and spend like a week or so or potentially longer on like polishing this model, we want to make sure it works, because if we want to make a big change at that point when the model is done, it's much harder. But at this phase, like Anthony said, it just takes half an hour. So something that's really helpful, even when there aren't big functional changes, is to just run around with the character. I found that has really helped us in making sure there's no surprises later, right? That just like run around in the world with the block in, kind of like pretend in your mind that you're playing the game, see how it feels, and you're able to root out a lot of problems at this phase. So it's sort of like spend half an hour now, save like 3 days later of work, right? So yeah.
For sure. I remember when we did the Jeep initially, like we did the block-in for that one. I think the Warden one went through a redesign just because when we started driving around the block-in, it felt like a bug or something. It was like this little mini car, and we're like, oh, this is not the feeling at all.
That's right.
So that one ended up getting a redesign just because the block-in didn't feel appropriate. So it's pretty huge. All right. So after that has been approved and we're liking everything that we're seeing, you're looking at 4 images here, and to your left, these are the high poly models, or we call the high poly models. Which literally obviously means a lot of polygons. And it's just like we just pump in all of the high-end details. So basically everything that looks sweet on a model is just jammed into the high poly model, where it's like it's got the bolts, you've got like little grooves and vents and all those things that just give the model its detail and its love, its personality, essentially. Oop. or not all of it, but a lot of it anyways, because this is still just creating those shapes and really pushing them and refining those shapes till it really feels and looks like the thing you're trying to make it look like. So the top one, you can see the wireframe. It's just like super dense, and there's just a ton of detail in it. And then in the bottom left corner, you can see the whole model. Now again, this one's kind of interesting because the barn is actually using assets that were existent already. And I just kind of blocked in those assets the way I would be using them for when I go and actually apply the textures. So they're just kind of a placeholder type thing to sit next to this high poly gear sulfur mining machine. And then to your right, you have the actual low poly model. So all of these details, they're really cool. Actually, I didn't include any of the projection stuff, unfortunately. But the really cool thing is all those details, for the most part, except when you're talking about really big silhouette changes, are projected onto this low poly model. So all those bolts, all of the grooves and the vent and all that stuff, it's all faked through a thing called, I'm sure you guys have heard the term normal mapping before, where it's actually sort of projecting high poly model data onto the low poly, and it bends with the light models. I don't know how to get all technical. I'm not a wizard here, but so anyways, essentially what you see, you're seeing the high poly details on a model with like a quarter or half of a quarter of the amount of triangles, and that just makes it able to run in game essentially without just cramping your system, because it just it's really taxing on your computer when you have like a ton of polygons. I mean, obviously there's games that can push those limits like crazy, but I think online there's more restrictions with that kind of stuff. But yeah, so anyways, and so there you go. That's the low poly model, and that's actually, believe it or not, the model you're seeing in game without its textures. So you can see how much texturing it does. And then from this point, there's another stage where you're going to unwrap the model, and essentially it's like kind of unwrapping a present or a box where you just make it nice and flat so you can draw on it. And I kind of skipped that part altogether because, to be honest, it's kind of boring. But then we bring it into Substance Painter, which I'm sure a lot of you guys heard of. This is I want to say it's a newer program, but it's not that new. Obviously, it's been around for quite a few years now. But it's something that's become an industry kind of standard, and it really revolutionizes the texturing process, because now you have this ability to see your model pretty much in a final finished state as you're texturing it, which is really, really cool. So again, this is kind of drawing back to Julian's concept, where you just have this super rusted out machinery that's just like been sitting there for a while, and the Wardens or the Colonials or whoever are coming along, and they're fixing it up, and they're reusing it so that they can use it for their own resource gathering. And it's funny because here you can't see the barn, obviously, because that, again, like I was saying, is going to be reusing some of the assets we have in game. And so you're only seeing the new assets that will be sort of added to that.
Apparently, they couldn't see anything, actually, because it was so dark, the image. Oh. They couldn't see anything.
Perfect. Well, it's a secret, and we can't give you guys all the secrets. Oh, really? That's too bad. It actually is. It does look kind of dark in here.
Is it just this image, or is
it's like in here?
Okay.
Oh yeah, it is pretty dark.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can see some of it here now.
You see that blotchy yellow? That's a model with some texture on it. But again, this is just another angle. You can kind of see it a bit better.
So for the people that didn't get it, this is what you guys use to texture it.
To texture. This is
and
texture.
That is after it's already been modeled and already been normal mapped, which is what you said adds the detail on top of the lower poly.
That's right.
And then you unwrapped, which is kind of like unwrapping this up as a painting. And so you can paint on top.
If you were to take a box, if you wanted to say make a box look like something, like you wanted to decorate it essentially, like it looked like a wooden crate, you wanted to paint that detail on, you sort of would like unwrap it so it was nice and flat, so you could just color it on a flat surface, and then you would fold it back up, kind of like origami.
Yeah.
But actually that's done after you do the low poly, and all of the normal mapping and all that detail projection is done in this program. It's like a super powerful program, super great. And yeah, it's pretty much, I think, become the standard over the past, like, I wouldn't know an exact number, but definitely 5 years maybe.
Well, in the past few years, every time you talk to anybody in the community,
it's huge.
So if you wanted to do this like 5 years ago, what would be different about it?
Like before Substance?
Yeah,
oh
before
my God.
Substance.
So for this,
Photoshop.
it would definitely.
There's
be
always Photoshop, yeah.
But to put it into perspective, okay, so this using this program, it will generate. So let me see if I can think off my top of my head. 1, 2, 3 or 4, what they call texture maps, which is what has the texture on the model.
Yeah.
And this will generate, as you're making it, it generates all 4 automatically. Before, you would have to generate each of those textures by yourself, like by hand, and then put them on in game. You know what I mean? And you'd have to, like, a lot of times paint out your seams. This thing takes care of seams. So, like, you know, if you're unwrapping something, you might have like a seam right in the middle.
Make sure that it's like completely fluid.
Nice and fluid, yeah. So you would have to take care of doing all that stuff yourself or by hand, going into Photoshop and painting this stuff out. But this program takes care of a lot of that, and it does a great job of doing it. I mean, obviously, of course, you still need to know what you're doing, but...
No, you don't. You just hit a button.
No, that's it's the art button. You see it over there? Oh, it's too dark.
Make
Sorry, guys.
metal machinery.
Yeah. It does say Foxhole Machinery up there. Well, actually, that's the other really cool thing about this is that you then can create preset materials that can be used uniformly for everything, right? So like once Adam established what the metal was, he's like, here's the metal. This is what Foxhole metal looks like. I was like, cool. Apply that metal, and then it's just a matter of me going in and tweaking parameters and you know, making it look, you know, beat up or rusty or whatever. But even like we've gotten to a point now where we've really figured out what a lot of this stuff looks like, and it's just a matter of going in, applying those materials, making the tweaks that we need, and we can get something that looks really decent.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really fun. I actually love this program. I think it's super useful and makes your life a lot easier. But yeah.
And the next part is the fun part, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, this is where HB's kind of stuff comes in. So, do you want to take this over? Or do you want me to keep talking?
Go for it. You're doing a great job.
Man, my mouth's getting dry over here.
Oh, I can take it over if you want. So after that, like usually, not in this case. This case, everything was done by Adam and Anthony. Did you do this one?
This one was me. Yes.
Okay.
This one was me. Yeah.
So basically, what's happening here is that I receive the models, the low poly, and what I do is that I create a bone system underneath it. And I rig it. And rigging, basically what it is that if you're creating a puppet and your polygons are the outside, you're creating the skeleton inside of that puppet so you can control it in animation. That's basically what it is. So these bright shapes that you see in this case, were done in Max using, in this particular case, using cat rigs, which is a bone system. It's slightly different than what I use for the characters or for other things, but it's just a difference between Max and Maya. Not a big deal. They all work the same. Basically, these are the bones, the little nodes that are control. Each one of them is going to control different parts of the mesh, different parts of the polygons. So what happens is that you can start moving these bones, and the polygons that are attached to these bones will move together.
Yeah.
I don't know what's your.
Oh, what's my next one?
What's our next one? So
next one is in action. Perfect. So now you can see the rig system actually working and how it works with the. Oh, it's so dark over here.
I know.
It's so dark, man. Sorry, guys. I wish it was lighter. I can post these in Discord afterwards if people were really curious to see them.
Yeah, so this is basically what an animator would do. After they would pick up from the rigger and move the bones and set what we call frames and keyframes, so that the bones know where to go, when to go, and generate an animation out of it. So it's basically you moving the bones now. It doesn't actually have to touch the model anymore. This is what I do a lot of the time as well, but I'm very, very happy that Anthony and Adam are also taking a crack at it, because it makes my life much easier.
Admittedly, it's a fun change of pace, you know, like I used to do a lot of rigging in a few of the positions I had before, so it's kind of fun to jump back into these simple ones. And honestly, this gives us an opportunity to sort of make our models come to life a little bit and add a little bit of character into the world of Foxhole with little things like this, whenever we can anyway, so it's cool. Oh, I guess I'll press the next one. Oh, and then we come to the final model. So this is like it in game, and at this point, what we've implemented now is that me and Adam have started to actually set up the blueprints that we're using, you will go in and like just give it a little bit more flavor. So Matt's been creating obviously all the effects, and we'll hook up his effects to the object, and we'll put in a few little pieces there on the side just to give it a little bit more like cool. Someone was mining here, and yeah, and that's pretty much it. So that's the whole process for the sulfur mine.
There's one thing that you didn't talk about, which was the destruction states.
Oh, pardon me. That's true. Yes.
Which is another thing on its own.
Those are a thing.
So, as you guys know, like a lot of our, basically all our world structures and everything that you build have at least 3 stages in which they look different. The more damage that they take, right?
Yeah.
So that comes when after you finish modeling the first one, the main one that is complete, you guys then proceed to destroy it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you take the mesh and you deform it and you add cracks, add problems and holes and stuff like that, and then all these different meshes are rigged to the same system, so they all use the same bones, they all use the same animations, and everything works. What works from one will work for all the other ones.
That's right. Yeah. This one was actually kind of cool. I'm sorry I didn't actually include those images, but I actually got to ding up the wheel a little bit, so it does this like, you know, when it's like doing its thing. But you know, I thought it was cool.
That's awesome.
I enjoyed doing it.
So the extra details that were put on this mine, like the animations and like the effects and things like that, is that something that you guys want to? Well, I already know the answer. I don't know why I'm asking it. But no. It's like you guys have talked about putting that on a lot of the structures moving forward, especially as we go back and we like go back to remake a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully we'll see more of those kinds of details in the new structures moving forward.
Yeah, I'm particularly happy that they are doing this because that means that they can do like the whole process for these like smaller objects, or smaller not in size obviously, but they require less animation. That means that they don't have to go to so many people, and that helps a lot on the pipeline. And like you guys have total control, which is beautiful. Then you can be more give more care to the structure. Like you already have such a good idea.
Well, to be honest, doing something like this, I think is instrumental to like any model or like anybody. Like oftentimes the studios that get really huge nowadays, they're so separated from different parts of the pipeline. And I've always believed that it's like you need to know a little bit of everybody of what's going on. Like, I mean, you don't have to be a pro, but like the more I know about, say, like if I'm working with Mark on programming something, if I know even just a fraction of what he's attempting to do in his code, then I can maybe make his life a little bit easier when I'm setting up the model. Like maybe it's better that it's 2 separate objects versus 1 object. And same with animating, it's like if HB doesn't have a perfectly symmetrical model for a character, it's actually more difficult because there's so many tools that you can use to just like mirror skin weights so that things are really easy, right? So it's like, it's just really, the more you know about that, the more you know. The more you know,
the more you don't screw your colleague down the pipeline.
Right? And when it's a small team like this, like it's just great. Like it's much better whenever you're helping each other out.
Although to be fair, because it's a small team, it's much easier. So when something happens down the pipeline, you just go and yell at the person. It's like, God damn it.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
So like something that's a good point to mention about the pipeline is that it can be quite long. So like, you know, it depends on the asset, it depends on how complicated it is, but before even the concept reference phase happens, there's sort of like a paper version where we're kind of planning things out on what this is going to be. So there's like a game design phase that happens even before that. And then after the videos are all done, there's also like a hookup process, and the programming is the programmers are involved there, so there's even more time in the pipeline, and then there's like a QA phase where it gets tested.
You just said the art part, not even like the
exactly.
That was just what I.
So like in some really good case for like simple asset, you know, it'll span a couple of weeks, but in a lot of more complicated cases, it can definitely take multiple months. So it's like sometimes when you know, and to be honest, it's not even for us, like even for like other games too. When you're kind of wondering why can't why can't more content be made, right?
Yeah.
And like usually on a lot of those other projects, their pipelines are more complicated than ours. Ours is relatively simple, I would say, which is our goal. We try to keep things simple. But on a more complicated pipeline, like an asset could take like 3-4 months, maybe even longer in some, especially in like a AAA game, it could be crazy, right? It's like it's super long pipelines, and sometimes it's kind of, you know, you look at those games, be like, why can't they just make like 20 new units and 5 new levels? And it's like, well, it's because it, you know, multiply what we showed you by a factor of 10 on some of those teams, and that's why, right? So
yeah, some of the pipelines gets crazy. I remember reading somewhere, and I unless it was the internet, so it's obviously 100% true. But I mean, I could see it potentially being true. But in God of War 3, the Gaia, like the giant like Earth Titan, she apparently they took her apparently 3 months to actually make just the high poly. So what I showed you was like 2 pictures of like this high poly looking metal machine thing. They took a character and they took it 3 months just working on just that one part of the pipeline.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, right? Because I'm sure like there was a lot of iteration, a lot of back and forth, but like, damn, 3 months for one character? Damn.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
cool.
with this, we're gonna go to. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thanks for having me.
That was a great walkthrough.
It was actually really fun. I think everybody took something out of it. It's pretty interesting.
Cool.
We're gonna go for some Q&A. If you guys want to start sending us questions, I'm gonna sort them through them and read them. Let me do this because it's easier for me to edit when I can see that it's a Q&A.
Okay.
And the first question that we have, Lego King 907, he had a question in regards to the mines. Will the mines take BMATs or EMATs to build, and will it auto refine things? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so there's actually been a lot of conversation about this. Basically, in its current version, it's BMATs to build, and it behaves like a factory. So you use your fuel as a resource, and you can order raw resources like scrap, and then you wait for a certain amount of time, and then you come back to it. Now, there's been a lot of conversation about this, and we've definitely heard a lot of your feedback. But what we're gonna do with how it works is we're gonna put it into 0.16 as it is, so that we can get a feel of a couple of things, and then we're gonna sit down with everyone. We're gonna listen to your feedback, and we've already been talking about this internally. We're going to take a look at whether or not what kind of changes might need to be made for that. So it's important that you guys try it out in its current version, so that we can get some like solid testing in a real environment. Because I know there's a lot of concerns, but it's also important to get some actual playtesting time on it. So kind of answered your question, and I added more onto it because I know the other people are kind of probably going to ask the same thing, so might as well get the answer out there.
Yep. Okay, so we have another one, actually 2 questions, and I'm gonna merge together. One is from Yaba 333, and another one is from Micro. Is there any plans to add NPCs, aka civilians, who have refused to leave? And on the same token, Micro asks, what about ambient wildlife, which is also NPC related?
Yeah. NPCs in terms of humans in the world, we sort of made a rule at the beginning that we really wanted to make sure that anytime you saw a human in the game, it was a player, right? We didn't want to break that rule, and that's the reason why all of the AI defenses, you don't actually see the person. They're usually covered by a canvas, or they're inside a pillbox or inside a garrison house. And it was a very specific choice we made, because if we actually showed the humans, then players would never really know. Like, it'd be, especially if you're new to the game, it would sort of put into question the entire system. Like, when you see someone, oh, is that actually a real player, or is that like an AI player? And we really wanted to be stay very true to that. So that's to answer that question. No human NPCs. But in terms of the wildlife, That's something we can consider. I think that a lot of the guys on the art team will be really excited about doing something like that to sort of breathe some life into the world. We'd have to take a look at how that's going to affect the server performance if we had to also take into account these like NPCs. But I think it would add to the immersion of the world. So it's an interesting thing to think about, right?
Okay, I have a more, I think it's a question to us, and it's not tagged, but I wanted to ask you because maybe it's something interesting. It's a hard one. Simo879810 says, you state, our goal is to support as many simultaneous players as possible and so on and so on. So why are you not fixing side stacking to bring back the players base that quit until this is fixed? Why is this not a priority to fix side stacking?
So by side stacking, I guess you're talking about like team imbalance, right?
I would say so. I don't know.
Yeah. So there's actually a lot of stuff that we've done there, and some of it might not be noticeable, which I think is actually a good thing. The first thing is that we do have a balancer in place. So at the beginning of a war, of a conquest, teams are really balanced. Like for the first couple of days, the auto balancer ensures that the side with more characters, they're gonna get a queue, and it's a bit of a hard situation because we specifically don't talk about the details, and that's taken by a lot of people as we're trying to hide things. But the reason why we don't do that is because we don't want people to try to game the system, right? If everyone knew the specifics, then some clan, some group, someone is going to, and we've seen this before, someone is going to try to game the system to try to prove a point, or for maybe just for fun. And that kind of would ruin an entire concept, entire conquest for a whole week, which kind of sucks for everyone. But for at least the first couple of days in a conquest, like both the factions are usually, well, especially at the very beginning, well within like 10-15%. So there is no, if you guys were imagining like one side is outnumbered by like 2-1 or something, that just simply is not the case. That's 100%. I can promise you that does not happen. And there's other things that we do too to help out. Smaller things like when there is that little bit of an imbalance, we incur longer spawn times on the team that has slightly more players. We give a tech bonus, resource bonus to the side with less players, and we found that over time, on the average case, it's gotten a lot better. It's not perfect, but there's trade-offs in every direction. There is no simple solution. All the simple solutions that we've tried so far has resulted in something much worse than what we have right now, and we're gonna continue working on it. But I think that it's much less problematic now than it was when World Conquest launched at the beginning of this year. And if there's any specific problems that you guys are seeing, still, we'd like to know about it. There was one more thing I wanted to mention about that, but I can't recall what it was. So maybe I'll just wait till it comes back. Yeah.
Sure. I have a question for Anthony right now, which is pretty cool. It's a more of a technical question, so if you guys are not familiar, Pause for Affliction asks, do you use or make procedural textures for texturing in Substance Painter, or do you use more pre-made materials?
No, you know what? I think pretty much everything we make here, because Foxhole has a certain art style that, like coming into it, as I learned from Adam, and there's a direction that we've been pushing more and more as the game gets more to a polished state, which is this painterly feel to it. we tend to use our own materials that we're creating. Like just recently, we've started to update all of the ground textures, which hopefully you guys have been noticing, which is using Substance Designer, and in using that, we've created just completely our own tile sets that are using this painterly, I guess, feel, vibe. I don't know what you want to call it exactly. But yeah, so essentially to answer your question simply, we've been making all of our own materials, and we've been applying it to fit into the world of Foxhole, because it doesn't fall into the confines of like real world environment, we'll say. If that answers your question. Does that answer it?
I think so.
Was that
Yeah, no, I think that answers the question. Easy or hard question, Mark? You got to choose.
Whatever.
Okay, let's see the first one. Okay, easy one. Mr. Bob Dubalina. Wow, I'm surprised I was able to answer. Will the camera view consider to be moved back 5 to 10 meters?
Move back, like zoom out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're working on a dynamic system for the camera. And it's not quite ready yet, but it's going to change a couple of things, and I think it will answer your question because from our internal tests, we found that it's pretty much, so far, I don't want to jinx it, but universally everyone's liked it, and it definitely gives more visibility and makes the viewport feel less claustrophobic. So yeah.
Cool. I'm then up to piggyback on that. There's another question about visibility, a little bit more, you know, I don't know how to say it. Where is it? So sorry. Smiling Akathon asks, will you change the rendering system? And what he means is enemies highlighted by bushes and structure models despawning 45 meters away. It's really weird when you climb a hill and you see nothing. Meanwhile, there can be a huge field of foxholes nearby. So I think that he's talking about the distance that things pop up and disappear on camera. Some of them have internally, we know it's different replication timers and distances and things like that. So are we thinking about changing that? Is it something that we are worried about? The way that sometimes if you're using like terrain advantage, for instance, it might be a problem.
I think that I want to, because I think there's a few different things that that question could be. There's a few questions that comes from that question, right? Like it's like I think because one way that things can pop in is due to replication. Simply, if the network connection isn't good enough, then things will pop in at the last minute. But I get the feeling that's not what's being talked about. There's another issue where certain defenses could be hidden by like foliage, or in some cases like short grass that looks like it shouldn't be covering anything, but it is. So that's another issue. So and then there's other things that will interact with our visibility system, but I know that we're fixing right now this one specific issue where if defenses are built inside things like grass, previously they were hidden, so we're actually literally fixing that right now. So that should help a little bit with that. With everything else, I think I'd need more specifics, so maybe that can be taken offline.
Well, maybe, yeah. So I'm gonna ask the last question right now, and if you guys have more questions, please drop a line to us on Discord. I'm gonna put the link to Discord at the end of the video right now or sometime in the description, and I'm sure that one of our moderators will put the link to the Discord right now as well on the chat. And I will ask one last question. It's a more simpler, but it's about a little bit about the philosophy of the game. I'm actually kind of curious about the answer for you guys. XSheepyX asks, do you see logistics as something a small group of people should do a lot, or something that everyone should do a little bit?
Well, I think that's a very good question.
And I think that could also expand to combat and intel. Like
yeah, so that's a really good question, and the answer is that we've always, from the beginning, our philosophy has been we give tools to the players and they decide how to use it. So we don't even want to say there should be 5 players doing it. There should be 10 players doing it, or there should be 100 players doing it. Like if 100 players all want to do Logi because they think that's a great strategy at the beginning, as an example, which we've seen things like that happen before, like large Logi-focused clans all doing a Logi rush at the beginning. That's fine. Like that's a part of the game. On the other hand, if only a couple of people are doing it, and everyone else is focused on combat, that's also fine, and that's basically how we see most areas of the game. Like we've always said, it's a sandbox game. I think if there is something lacking with Logi, I've been talking about this over the last week, is that there's not a whole lot of progression and choice. There's not a lot of trade-offs. You're just kind of doing the same thing at the beginning of the conquest as you are at the end of it. And I think that's one area that we want to work on, to provide more options, more ways to strategize, and yeah, so that's basically the answer. So
that's great. And with that, I will bring this fantastic dev stream to an end. Thank you very much, Anthony, for joining us and explaining how the pipeline on the art side goes.
No problem. Thanks for having me, everyone.
It was very fun. Thank you everybody for watching. If you are catching us on YouTube, make sure to check our Discord, so you can talk to us, the devs, personally, and particularly KFC. He loves talking to everybody. Also check out these dev streams every second week on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. EST, but it's bi-weekly. So you can ask questions live. And I don't know.
Oh, you're gonna say it?
Oh, you think we should, hold on, before that, they think we should, I know we're gonna talk about this more next time, but just so people can plan ahead, if we can give a small mention about PAX.
Oh yeah, so yeah, that's another thing. We'll be going to PAX, this PAX West.
Yeah. That
is gonna happen in, what's the date again? I think August 31st, something like that.
31st.
So on that weekend, the very last weekend of August and first weekend of September. We are not gonna have a booth this time, but we plan on meeting everybody that is there. KFC is organizing meetups, and so that all players can get together, and then we can talk to you guys and see. The idea for us is to just go and meet all the fans and have some fun and talk, and if you're of legal age, share a drink with, which is is what I'm going for at least. So I'll be there. Mark is gonna be there. Anthony is gonna stay because somebody has to work.
You got it.
He's gonna hold down the fort.
So yeah, exactly.
Someone's gotta make that art.
Yeah, but it's gonna be fun, and I hope you guys see us there and have fun with us.
Yeah, and just make sure to not be shy and message KFC.
Yes.
He will, if you don't message him, it's going to be hard to get a hold of us. So don't be shy. He's nice.
Well,
he's a nice guy.
We're going to be there. And meanwhile, Anthony will continue to stay foxy.